Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for being here. This is a talk about lessons and mistakes that we had while changing our culture for product growth. So I'm Jaime Jorge, I'm CEO and co-founder of Codacy. And first, some context. Before that, some context first. At Codacy, what we do essentially is we provide software engineering insights through a DevOps intelligence platform. And we've been mostly sales-led in our growth. And in 2020, we were very interested in product-led, in becoming much more, in growing much more related to products. For a number of reasons. First of all, we started experiencing some churn in our enterprise segment. We have a number of segments in our customer base, and the enterprise segment, we started getting some churn. This was related to some overexposure that we had to some certain industries and that were affected by COVID. And so we started thinking, well, maybe we need to rethink some of these things internally. There was also high uncertainty in 2020, and we wanted to be much more efficient. We wanted to scale due to efforts that we do product-wise and not just salespeople and customer success team members. And a very important part of it is how we build product in Codacy. We build a solid solution, a solid core product value that ends up being repackaged and sold to other different segments, such as the enterprise and the SMB. So by focusing and giving a fantastic user experience as the basic foundation for growth, that will end up being flowing into the remaining segments. There's also another element, which is it's also the future. And right now it's also the present, right? And so we aligned our team in 2020, started working towards product-led growth. And this, what you see right here, is essentially the segment of self-service, the smaller accounts that we had, and the ARR associated with that segment. As soon as 2020 hit, we saw a bump. And that was the churn associated with some accounts either going out of business or being much more risk-averse. But as we started focusing on product-led growth, and why the reason we are going to be paying attention to this talk now, is we started seeing some growth related to the efforts that we did. So product-led growth started actually producing results, getting us return, okay? Right now, I'm going to share with you is that there is also another chart here, which is blood, sweat, and tears associated with actually doing this. So 3 lessons that I'm going to share with you that were very important and I guess came as a consequence of impacting our culture to achieve product-led growth. The first one, a little bit of a truism, but it takes time. It takes time to do many things when you're changing culture, but when you're affecting the company in such fundamental way, it takes a lot of time. And we found that it takes time to first align the team on the importance of product-led growth, on making that user experience be the foundation of growth. It took time to plan, to get a first roadmap, to get it, what the experience we're going to try to get growth in the company. It took time to implement, not only from the product level, but the rest of the teams working together. It took time to realign, and I guess the talk is really about this. The realignment is extremely difficult, and we had to continuously realign the company. And last but not least, it took time to see results. In fact, from the moment that we introduced product-led growth to the moment where we started seeing some results, it took at least 6 months, okay? 6 months in the startup life is an eternity. It's a long time, right? And so I guess this was very important. We underestimated the time it took to see results. In fact, in our business plans, we thought growth would come immediately as soon as we started operating in a product-led growth manner. And it wasn't at all the reality. In fact, it took much longer than we anticipated. And this caused frustration in the team, which in 2020 was not a good year to have frustration, right? People were at home, locked up, and frustrated. So this was a big lesson, is overestimating the time it takes to see impact was very important. And I guess, a lesson that you could apply to many other business plans. The second lesson that I want to share with you today is experimentation is extremely important, is the name of the game. From all the things that we try to do, all the initiatives that we planned, all the product features that we planned, most didn't have tons of results, didn't have actually results. Some had, an interesting outcome, but there was one or two that were actually very interesting, okay? Some context for all of you. We in Codacy sell seats. So we normally sell organizations of developers, and each developer, we charge a price per seat. So we revamped the way that people could add users to their organizations within our product, okay? So we made it super simple to add a new user, and that was very important. And so at the moment that we introduced that feature, we started beyond controlling churn, because teams started actually adding users and made it much more simple to manage their users. We started seeing that growth. So this feature was highly correlated with the growth that we've seen. Reality is that, after digging deeper, the truth is a little more complex than that. We found that much of the product improvements initiatives that we did worked really well together. Allowing users to add, allowing our customers to add more users catalyzed that value, right? So they were actually giving us feedback and saying, the product is better and I'm adding more users because of that, right? And so we over-indexed on this feature, but as actually a consequence, many of those ducks end up being valuable as well. The lesson here, and I guess the whole point is, we didn't know at the time that adding users was so valuable without the experimentation phase. So now it was obvious that well, adding users is very important, right? But at that time we didn't know. So we had to experiment. We had to experiment to get to that point. And I guess that's a very important part. Creating the space so that your team knows, so the team to experiment without a lot of pressure is very important. And the third lesson that I want to share with you today is alignment is painful. I mentioned alignment 2 times in my slide about time. Alignment is painful. And why? If you're transitioning from being a sales-driven organization, sales-driven growth, to becoming much more product-led, there's tons of things that you have to manage. You've created a culture that feeds on getting features done and implemented so they can close deals, many times short to medium term, right? When you're changing to product-led growth, you're saying no to a number of things. You're also thinking much farther into the future. You're thinking medium to long term and not just short term on deals. When you're saying no to many of these things that sales wants to close, customer success wants to close so they can expand, it affects compensation of people. So you're hitting the bottom line of some of your team members, which is a very hard thing, right? I can tell you today that we underestimated the power of incentives, the power of the commission incentive. It was very difficult. In fact, it made managing the priorities very difficult, because even if we wanted to push the agenda of product-led growth, we had sales saying, well, that's fine, but I have 50K of ARR that I can close right now. That's pretty interesting, right? If they only have this feature. That was very difficult. And to be very frank with all of you, it continues to be a very difficult equation to solve. Transitioning from sales-led to product-led is very complicated. We still haven't figured out completely this. We made the transition, and today, if you look at our company today, we became again much more sales-driven. And so we were again trying to put the priority for product-led growth. The good things here is, as I mentioned before, the things are not as clearly divided, but we still enforce the product-led growth because we have one core product and the other segments fed into that. And the client-facing teams actually benefited from this. We had to kind of, force a little bit the spoon to the teams, but they afterwards start seeing a better product that they could sell. And so as a result, they started getting upsells. So it was a good thing. We made the company think medium to long term as opposed to just short term on deals. So with one minute left, wrapping up is we overestimated time. We underestimated time. And I think the lesson here is overestimate. Multiply it by 2, multiply it by pi, multiply it by a factor, especially if you're sales-led, because it will take much longer. The part of getting a team to work on a bigger problem is very difficult. Create space for experimentation. Let the team try things with space to fail. That's okay. It's part of it. You put targets, you put the North Star, and they go for it, and you're there helping them and motivating them. And last but not least, careful with alignment and incentives, especially if you're sales-driven. It's a very hard equation. If you can start from the beginning as product-led, that's fantastic. And in fact, that's actually what we're doing with the new product that we're launching. We're building a new product, Pulse, that measures engineering performance. And from the very beginning, we're making it product-led in its growth, which is much easier, right? So these are my lessons. I hope it was useful. Happy to chat about any other mistakes or lessons that we made. And thank you for watching this.